Hi, today we're going to make this card using all 4 technique elements from TODO. So embossing with a folder, letterpressing, hot foiling and die cutting all in one. We've got the white glossy card in the background that's been run through an embossing folder. Then we've got the sentiment that's had the sentiment letterpress plate inked and then run through TODO. This also comes out of the embossing folder, that's just been cut out as an extra. We then have our die cutting and embossed feathers here, and we also have the hot foil and die cut feathers here. So let's begin. First of all, we're going to go back to our settings guide and we're going to look at what we need for our embossing folder. And we need C and B and settings 5 to 8. So anywhere in between there really. So we're going to start by putting my C mat down on the actual plate of TODO. I'm then going to pick up my B plate, and also I have got my embossing folder, the hummingbird one, and I'm going to stick that onto the C plate and then B over top. And I'm going to go for about 6.5, so we're just going to press that down, a little arrow goes over the marker, and then we're going to start to turn the handle. And you can, if you get to this stage and you think, oh, that's really tight or difficult to turn, then just take the actual roller back to the beginning and adjust the roller to the correct setting and just get to know your machine really, because they may differ slightly but not enormously. So I'm going to roll this through. We're going to take off this top plate and we're going to see how we've got on with this embossing. And what I wanted it to do this time was actually deboss the image, which we've got. So you can see there we've got this fabulous debossed image there on white glossy card. Okay, so quite simply what we're going to do now is we're going to take this and we're going to cut it into 3 strips. Now I've cut this to 6 by 6 and we're just going to cut it into 3 strips of 2 inches. So using my trimmer, just going to start at the left hand side, cut one at 2 and then the second one at 2. And then we're going to move that one, and then we're just going to check that your card is straight on the third one, so make sure that it's 2 inches and it's even all the way down, which it is. So I'm going to then pop this to one side. Now what I've done coming to do this demonstration is I've actually made my card, and you can see I've used all the colours on the background of the card that I'm going to actually use in the embellishment, so that ties it all in. And the trick when doing this is to start with the middle one, because then you'll know that the middle one is straight rather than starting from left to right, because you might end up with a wider gap on one edge than the other. So a little bit of wet glue. And again, wet glue is great for this because it gives you that wiggle time. So just gauge top and bottom, left and right. You can measure this and put a little marker on if you're not confident doing it by eye. And then we'll put the one on the left. So I'm just going to pop this one on, making sure that you've got a gap in between. So you want the gap in between these 2 pieces, the gap here, to be the same as the gap here on the left hand side to the edge of the purple, so that you know that it's even right the way across, like that. And then the third one in place, which is part of the hummingbird. And again, make sure you've got the same gap in between. If you're slightly out, you're not really going to notice that much because you're going to have other stuff going on the card. So we've got our embossed pieces down on there now. There we go. Right, so now I'm going to put a piece of red card. This is just, I've just cut this on a trimmer. It's about 3/4 of an inch. And I'm going to make it start at the red part of the card here, so the left hand side, and finish on the right hand side. So it looks like it's meant to be there. And just put a little bit of glue on that. So we're going to stick that so that it just comes about 1 inch, maybe 3/4 of an inch up from the bottom of the card. So we've got space for the bow and we've got space for our feathers to go. So I'm going to stick that on there like that. I then have a bow that I've already made. So I've just used the bow maker and done a triple bow and put a little dazzler in the middle, and I'm going to actually stick that on there now. And the reason I'm doing that first is because then I can arrange my feathers around the bow. so that we know that we're going to have a nice layout when we finish that. Okay, so that's the first part. I'm just going to pop that to one side. So the next element that we're going to look at is using the letterpress plates, but using them with ink this time rather than just pushing it into the cotton cardstock. So I'm going to use an archival ink from Ranger. All right, this is a permanent ink. Now don't worry, it won't stain your letterpress plates. You just clean them off straight away. It's not going to leave an ink residue on them, but it means that it dries instantly on your cardstock, which is what you want. All right, and actually if you use a water-based ink, what we found was that it actually bubbles on the metal, so you need to use a permanent ink. If you find there's any slight bubbling, then you can actually use an embossing ink first, like the Perfect Medium, and that will just create a sticky surface on the letterpress plate so that your permanent ink will then stick to it. So I've inked that up. I'm then going to just take a piece of regular cardstock. All right, this isn't cotton cardstock, this is just regular card. And as a result of that, what I'm doing is taking the pressure up to 7, all right? So it's coming, the rollers are lifting further away from the card, because what I found is if you work lower down with more pressure on, so at number 6, so the rollers are further down, it can make the letterpress plate cut into your card, and you don't want that. You want it to look like it's just been stamped. So then I've got our C mat underneath, we've got a letterpress plate, we've got a card, then we're going to add the A plate, and we're just going to place that over there. I like to just keep it in position while TODO comes across the top and just takes in those plates. And you really shouldn't need to put any force on that at all. You'll feel when it starts to hit the actual plate, and then just take it right the way across. But this will actually be the lightest movement. This will be lighter than using it with your cotton cardstock or die cutting and using an embossing folder, because it's literally just skimming across the top and transferring that ink onto your card. So I'm going to take that off now. Fingers crossed, there we are, look, we have a perfect sentiment that says happy birthday. Because it's permanent ink, you could do this on ribbon, you could do it on acetate, you could do it on your mirror card. It's all about the ink and the placement of that ink, and that's easy when you've got the letterpress plates and TODO. So we will trim that down, and then we can get on with the next element. So just over to my trimmer. I'm just going to trim this down to a size that will suit the card, and I'm just doing that really by eye. I'm kind of looking at where my trimmer is compared to where the top of the letters finish, or the side of the letter, and just work your way around and trim off any excess card like that. You can ink the edges a little bit if you like, use the same colour ink or one that coordinates with your card, and there we've got our sentiment. Okay. The next element we're going to make is the feathers. So we're going to use the feathers dies, and then I'm going to give you a tip for embossing, putting the embossing detail on them. So we're going to use, I've done them out of teal already. I'm now going to do them out of this purple cardstock. So I'm going to place the actual embossed piece, which is this piece, and this will give you the detail, and then I'm going to just place the die over the top. Now, because these are small dies and they're quite simple dies, you can do all 4 at once, but I would absolutely say tape them down, okay? And because we don't have to then move this platform to put it through the machine, they will stay where they are. So I'm going to take my A plate now. I'm going to place that over the top because we use A and B. And we also use a setting of 6 to 8 for die cutting, so I'm going to go at 7. I'm going to go across, and you may hear some cracking, like it does sound quite scary, actually, when you first hear it, but trust me, it's a good sign. And it's just the metal cutting into the plastic, which is your cutting plate. So if you're hearing that, it means it's working. It's a bit frightening when you first hear it, because you think, oh, please tell me I haven't broken my machine, but it's nothing to do with that. It's just the way that it works. So we now have our pieces cut, and you can see there that we've got these nice clean edges. And I'm actually going to leave that in now. I'm going to just flip it over, and I'm actually going to now put the C plate on top. Now this is the mat that will push into it and create the embossing. This isn't in your instruction manual, but I found that if I move it up between 3 and 4 numbers, so from 7 I'm going to take it up to 10.5, or it might need 11. somewhere between 3.5 and 4 complete numbers, then you will actually get an embossed effect. So this was something that I just learnt by playing with the machine, and that's something that you'll do at home. Now, can you see how it's moving those plates? That means that I need to take it up further. So I'm just going to wheel it back, I'm going to lift it, and I'm going to move it up to 11. And then this time it should manage to get over those plates like that. So it takes the plates in, and that's a good gauge actually of whether you've got your levels set right or not. And like I say, it's just a case of using it and having a good play, really. Having some fun. So I'm just switching hands because it's easier to just keep it running through. And then we should have 4 lovely feathers that are embossed and die cut. We're just going to get these plates apart. You will find that there is a little bit of suction involved because one of the plates is quite, it's like a silicone mat. But there we go. So we've now got our feathers. If I just take these out of here, die cut and embossed. Now, it's not a deep emboss. It's not like you would get with an embossing folder. It's more like a detail impression that they've put in there. And then if you use something like the gilding waxes over the top, that would pick up that detail as well. So we've used our die cut feathers now. We've got those ready. So next we'll go on to the hot foil. Right, so now we're ready to move on to the hot foiling part of TODO. What I've done prior to this is actually plugged this in, full UK connectivity, all right. There's a little button at the side here that actually is your power on and off button. Your light will come on red, and within 20 minutes it will turn to green, and then you're ready to go. So this metal area here gets very hot, all right. And then I'm just going to take this feather, this is the hot foil plate, and I'm just going to place it onto the metal area. Leave it for a couple of seconds, I would say, maybe 10 to 15 seconds just to warm those plates through. And then you're going to place your foil colour side down onto your TODO plate. So nothing underneath, no A, B or C on this. You're then going to take a piece of cardstock. If your foil is bigger than your cardstock, I would recommend you put a piece of card in between the excess foil and your A plate, because it will foil on plastic and it's not easy to get off. It won't damage it, you'll still be able to use it, but if you want to keep it nice and pristine, then that's the way to do it. I've changed the dial to 3 because it's recommended a setting of 2 to 3. And I just kind of hold the plastic plate in place until TODO's kind of come over the top of it, and you'll feel it hit those plates, and it may move slightly, but it's not an issue. This is why I don't fill the metal area completely with different with little plates. You need to do a few at a time. And I'm just going to wheel this right along here. Okay. Now, please remember that when you take this off, the plates are going to be hot. So this is just warm. The card should have the foil attached to it like that, which it has, but these are going to be very hot. So in your kit that's come with it is this, and this is your magnetic tool, all right. So it's got a silicone handle, magnetic tool. You're going to pick up those dies and you're going to use a silicone mat to take them off your pickup tool, and then you're going to lay them somewhere safe out of the way while you either get ready to do more hot foiling or you leave it to cool down. So then when I peel this off, we then have these fabulous foiled feathers. Okay, any residue like this will just rub off because it hasn't actually been pressed into the card. It's just that this has picked up a little extra area. And then we're going to use the dies that we used in the last element to then cut these out. So now what we've done is we've foiled our feathers, and I've placed one of the outer edge dies around the feather that I want to die cut. I've got my B plate on my base plate of TODO, and I'm going to place that die side down. I've taken my dial back to 7, which is what I use for die cutting, and then my A plate will go on top, and we're just going to cut out this feather. And then we're going to put the card together so you can see how quick and simple it is to put everything together from one machine. Diversity, that's what it is. So let's just make sure that's cut. This is through white glossy card as well, so don't be scared of trying to foil on black glossy cardstock. I've done it on parchment. Acetate is lovely, but you have to use the heat resistant acetate. So yeah, just have a play and see what you can come up with. So, die out, there's our foiled feather, and now we're ready to go and put our project together. All right, so we've put the sentiment on, and we've also put the hummingbird on in place that I cut from the green cardstock, and then we're just going to start adding our feathers in place. And you can be quite random with this. If you like it, then it's right. That's all that matters, really, if you're happy with your work. And I'm just going to lay these on here. So kind of, I wouldn't put a teal one there because it's right next to the actual bird itself, but I could bring one further down here, maybe, just to balance it out. You don't want kind of all one colour in one area. You want to make sure that it's nicely balanced. And I'm just going to pop one of these up here just to give me some height. So it's kind of with the tail of the ribbon going up like that. And then we're going to use some smaller ones that we've got here just to come around the back of here, just to add a little bit of detail in there too. So it follows along. And a small teal one here, or you can get away with a larger one there. You can always cut them down a bit. So if I want to kind of cut that bit away, I can then have that just popping up there. And the nice thing about this is, unless you really want to, you can make two the same. You can just kind of be a bit random with it, really, a bit creative with it, and stick it where you want it to go. So if we pop that there, and then I want to put plenty of silver ones in, because for me the foiling just takes it to another level of elegance, really. I just think this adds that extra special finish to your projects. And it's great that you get different sizes of feathers, different styles of feathers, that they'd have dies that work with them. And it just makes making really special cards very simple. And actually, once you've bought the machine, it's quite inexpensive to do as well, because you can make lots of different ones with the same dies and just bits of cardstock, really. So I'm just going to add another little silver one in there, maybe just coming down at an angle just to cover that little bit of red up there. And maybe one more smaller purple one which can just slot into there. And then I think I'm happy with that. And there's nothing to stop you spending a day just die cutting and embossing and hot foiling and then putting everything together. So all I would add to that then really would be a little gemstone for the hummingbird's eye, and I'll show you that on our finished sample. And there you can see you've got a lovely project with that accent foil, but you've created everything yourself.